Welcome to Exploring Addiction by Baker's Finest. I am Amber Lucart, a psychology major here at Baker College. In my group, you will hear from Dennie and Katelynn, who are also majoring in psychology, and Molly, who is a business major. In a few moments, I'm going to start off by telling you about the inspiration behind our topic of addiction. After you learn about our inspiration, Dennie will take over and explore our goals for this project, along with what addiction is and how addiction is treated. Katelynn will then take over and discuss recovery and real-life experiences. And after Katelynn, Molly will explain to us the importance of bonding and connection in recovery and the economic impact of addiction. Our inspiration for this project comes from a TED Talk by Johann Hari called Everything You Know About Addiction is Wrong. Johann talks about how we take addicts, we punish them and treat them poorly, and then we hope for them to stop using. Now, there are a lot of unknown answers to addiction that Johann was eager to find out, like what causes addiction, and why do we continue to use treatments that consistently fail? Isn't there a better way to help these people? Johann spent years trying to understand addiction, and he has finally figured out that almost everything we know and understand about addiction is wrong. New evidence proves that we have to change our approach and policies towards addiction. Bruce Alexander is a psychology professor from Canada who did a study on rats. In one box, you have just a rat and two water bottles. One water bottle is plain water and the other bottle is heroin water. In another box, you have two water bottles exactly the same, filled with plain water and heroin water. But in this second box, this rat also has a rat friend and a wheel to run on and food and many other things that rats like. Almost always, the rat who is alone will drink the heroin water until it dies from an overdose. The other rat, who is hanging out in his fun rat box, rarely, if ever, drinks from the heroin water. So what does this tell us? The first rat will almost always overdose and kill itself, but the second rat, if ever, uses the drugged water because life is happy, has purpose, and it feels fulfilled. I'm going to leave you with this thought so Dennie can take over from here. And that thought is, if we focus on giving people a purpose, creating happiness in our lives, and connecting with others, would we see a large decrease in the number of addicts in our lives?
Thank you, Amber. My name is Dennie Fryer, and I'm part of the team Baker's Finest. I'd like to talk to you today about goal and execution. The goal of this presentation is to share alternative theories regarding addiction, and possibly uncover the possibility that the historical theories regarding addiction may be misguided and have perpetuated more addictive behavior throughout the history of addiction. The execution of the goal. Firstly, identify what causes addiction. Secondly, explore alternative theories of addiction. And finally, formulate a better approach to help addicts recover. You may ask yourself, what is addiction? Addiction is a complex condition, a brain disease that is manifested by compulsive substance use despite its harmful consequences to the user. People with addictions have an intense focus on using a certain substance or substances, such as alcohol or drugs for instance, to the point that it takes over their entire life. What if addiction is an adaptation of your environment? You may ask yourself, how is addiction treated? There are effective treatments for addiction that are available. The first step on the road to recovery is recognition of the problem. The recovery process can be hindered when a person denies having a problem and lacks understanding about the cause of their addiction. And a core part of addiction is that not being able to bear to be in the presence of your own life. Thanks for letting me share this knowledge. Now we are going to hear from Katelynn regarding the recovery process and her own personal experience with addiction and the road she chose to recovery.
Hi there, my name's Katelynn Crosby, and today I will be discussing the topic of recovery. I will start by saying I am a drug addict. Thankfully, I'm a drug addict in recovery, but nonetheless, I am an addict. Many people would be embarrassed or ashamed to call themselves that, but for me, acknowledging my addiction is mandatory. It's mandatory because for years I lied to myself and acted like I did not have an addiction problem and that I wasn't abusing medication. I lied to my doctor, to my husband, and to everyone around me. This disease clothed me with denial, secrecy, and shame. You see, I knew that the worst thing I would ever become would be an addict. My parents told me that, the school told me that, as well as coaches and pretty much everyone in my life. So when I knew that I started to struggle with addiction and I couldn't stop taking my medication pain pills, instead of reaching out to someone that I trusted or to my doctor, I chose to handle things myself. My idea was to call an old friend and ask them who they got their medication from. And they put me in contact with a dealer who, at the time, felt like a pharmacist to me. I was buying prescription drugs that someone had purchased legally, and I was able to rationalize in my head why I was not wrong for doing this. My intention from the start was to buy the prescription drugs, wean myself off of them slowly, and do this so that no one would ever know my addiction, and I would never have to face the guilt and shame and embarrassment of coming clean with this. I'm sure you're all thinking, wow, what a terrible idea. And yeah, it really was. But at the time, I was unable to understand or accept that I could have gone to the doctor and explained to them what happened and gotten help. Eventually, my addiction got so out of hand that I had no choice but to seek help. I tried 2 different types of treatment, including the methadone clinic and Suboxone treatment, and relapsed twice. It was at this point that my psychiatrist recognized the need to take a more radical approach, and he prescribed me Vivitrol injections, which is a month-long opioid blocking medication which blocks opioid receptors in the brain. So if a patient does try to abuse opioid prescriptions, they will have 0 effect. This was a medication that was very expensive and one that not many doctors can prescribe. But I will tell you, it saved my life. It worked because I knew that I could not abuse medication, and so I knew that if I had this injection for at least 1 month, I would not use. And I kept on this medication for 7 months. In that time, my brain was able to heal and recover from some of the damage I had caused it, and my thinking began to become more clear. Although I did not want to attend recovery meetings, at first I realized that the addiction was only a symptom and that there were bigger problems that I needed to deal with. So I started attending Celebrate Recovery at my church. I also found a therapist and started going back to college. I learned that a lot of my problems came from past hurts and traumas that I hadn't dealt with, and that I had a bad habit of isolating myself from the world. And my meetings taught me that this is very common for addicts. We tend to isolate ourselves from everyone else because we are so ashamed and embarrassed of what we have done to ourselves. As the isolation grows deeper, so does our addiction. And it's a vicious cycle that keeps going on and on. And this is why recovery meetings work. Attending recovery meetings gets us out of isolation and into a group of people who understand us and who want us to succeed. It's a society that helps each other grow and learn from their past hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And to deal with those hurts, habits, and hang-ups in a healthy way. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. I would like to take a moment to tell anyone who may be struggling with addiction or who has a loved one who struggles with addiction to seek out the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration on the web or call their national helpline at 1-800-662-4357. Thank you for letting me share.
Hi, my name is Molly. I will be covering the economic impact of drug and alcohol addiction on society. We must build a system that is designed to help drug addicts to reconnect with society and so too leave behind their addictions. This is where treatment and addiction treatment facilities plays a large role in addiction. The devastating physical effects of drug abuse have long been established, as have the negative impacts addiction can have on one's social and emotional well-being. But an often overlooked result of substance abuse is the financial burden inflicted on addicted individuals, their families, and society as a whole. As a person descends deeper and deeper into drug or alcohol abuse, their ability to earn money often decreases, while their addiction-related expenses continues to soar. Many people in this situation find themselves forced to rely upon friends or family members for financial assistance, while others end up destitute and reliant upon government assistance for other social services. Drug and alcohol use in the United States costs $1.45 trillion in economic loss and societal harm annually. This includes $578 billion in economic loss and $874 billion in societal harm through the quality of life adjustment and premature loss of life. Based upon the research that I have found, treating everyone who needed but has not received treatment results in a loss in direct and indirect economic costs. But taking into account the intangible economic costs, there is a positive economic gain to society. The avoidable cost per substance abuser was $13,500 in direct and indirect costs. If including intangible costs, this totals to be $34,000. I found the cost of treatment to be $11,600 per user. If everyone who needed substance abuse received treatment, it would come at a cost of $224 billion, but it would save over $368 billion in direct, indirect, and intangible costs, yielding a $142 billion economic gain to society. Faced with what appears to be perpetually spiraling costs, we believe that by revising how these dollars are spent, could dramatically decrease how much is paid out every year. Treatment is a bargain compared to expenditures for jail, foster care for children, and health complications that often accompany addiction. Rarely do we have public initiatives that can save society as much as substance abuse treatment and recovery support services. Treatment provides an opportunity for recovery for the individual, better homes for children, and improved safety to our communities.
Methods are many, principles are few. Methods always change, principles rarely do. It's time to adjust current and common methodologies of addiction remediation and change the paradigm to focus on social recovery, meaningful connections, and making a measurable difference. Showing respect and love to addicts will reinforce their connections, and the additions will see greater progress than current strategies that reduce connections. Giving them a purpose through a job or volunteering can have a large impact on how an addict views their life and will give them a higher rate of successfully putting addiction behind them. The opportunity to change the outcome of lives is real. It's time to take action and see results.